we're going to talk about Sweet Fanny. The Sweet Fanny from Fulton County, Georgia. We are all familiar with the bogus Rico case filed by Fani Willis in her office, and she was just caught by the judge engaging in, we'll just call it malfeasance, to the point to where at least her special prosecutor boyfriend Paramore was instructed out of there to get out of the case. Also, the judge did allow for what we have been talking about many times, this interlocutory appeal, which is an appeal during a case, which is rather unusual. Normally you get an appeal at the end of a trial, at the end of a civil trial, at the end of a criminal trial. Rarely a judge will allow, or a person is allowed to file for an interlocutory appeal when something like this happens. Now, in the state of Georgia, you have to have permission of the judge to file an interlocutory appeal. It's not that way in all states. Additionally, in the state of Georgia, the Court of Appeals has to accept it. I personally think the Court of Appeals will accept it. Most of the talking heads on TV are saying that they will not accept it. But the reason I think they will accept it is because this is the kind of case they look for, where you have the law is unclear. For example, in this particular situation, it really has nothing to do with Donald Trump, if you can believe that. It has everything to do with when is it allowed for a prosecutor, a DA, to be removed off the case, because the case law is unclear. The state law is unclear. There's case law saying that if the appearance of something improper is there, the DA has to go. And then there's case law that also says you have to basically prove that there is some type of malfeasance. It's a higher bar of proof. This is the type of case that a court of appeals, frankly, a state Supreme Court, would be interested in and deciding the law for the state of Georgia. If they don't take the case, I would be rather surprised. Because remember, even though Georgia is somewhat of a purple state now, it's still, in my opinion, is a red-ish state. The state government is overwhelmingly controlled by the Republicans, and most, if not all, of the judges on the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court have been appointed by candidates, Republican governors, this type of thing. So stay tuned. We'll see how this goes. Now, back on Fanny, Sweet Fanny, she just never learns her lesson. This woman is just stupid, absolutely stupid. I want to also point out that I firmly believe that the Supreme Court, unlike the other pundits that you hear about all the time, I think the United States Supreme Court, just so I'm clear as to what Supreme Court I'm talking about, I firmly believe that the United States Supreme Court, they're taking arguments, I believe it's April 25th, April 26th, on Donald Trump's appeal asking for absolute immunity as president of the United States. And listen, this is a very important subject. I have been studying this intensely. The bottom line is this. I think the Supreme Court is going to give a president absolute immunity for his official acts. I don't see any way they do not. And if they don't, God help us all, because that will essentially be a way for the judiciary branch to swallow up the executive branch. Instead of having three separate but equal branches of government, you will now have the judicial branch de facto in charge of the presidency, because every president from this day forward will be worried about a pair of handcuffs waiting on them for one of the 2,300 prosecutors, solicitors that would have the authority to have a then former president arrested for whatever. For example, you had Joe Biden with that terrible withdrawal out of Afghanistan, where you had 5 American soldiers killed. What happens if he leaves office and one of the prosecutors decides that his decision was too hasty, and his hasty decision boiled down to some type of manslaughter charge? So they file charges on Joe Biden and he's arrested. I'm telling you, that's where this is going to head if it's allowed to stand. Now, we'll talk about at a later date that one Supreme Court that was hearing this case, the Court of Appeals out of I believe it was the District of Columbia, came up with that question that the attorney was not prepared for, something to do with what if SEAL Team 4 or 5, whatever, if the president instructed them to take out the leading candidate. Well, there's a lot to say about that. That is not an official act of a president. That would be something different. I'm just telling you that this is the way they're going to have to rule. And if they don't rule that way, God help us all. And I've had someone mention to me, well, how is it that we can tolerate having a president that's above the law? And the way I answer that is no one's above the law. But when we elect a president, the remedy is the Congress can impeach him and the Senate can remove him. And I've had the same same individual I'm thinking of tell me, oh, well, that can be a problem because the president could simply resign before Congress could impeach him, and then there's no criminal liability. And my response to it is this. Our founding fathers were aware of this. If you read the Federalist Papers, they were concerned about a lot of these type of issues. They were definitely concerned with the president, the position of the president being weakened by impeachment, weakened by prosecutors going after him. This is a long-standing tradition in our country that a president cannot be charged while he is president of the United States or after he's president of the United States for anything and everything he's done as president of the United States. And if they change that, God help us all. Remember this, even if under some theory, some weird scenario, the president of the United States, whether it is Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or whatever, if somehow they commit malfeasance and they escape, that's just a price that you and I have to pay for our freedom. It's worth the chance that one person might get away with some type of malfeasance. It's more important that we all have our liberty and have our freedom. And that's what I want you to remember when we get around to discussing this issue. I hope that that is clear enough for everybody to understand. Nothing created by a man, nothing created by men and women, anything is going to be perfect. Even our founding fathers, with all the wisdom they apparently had, it's just not a perfect scenario. What is important is that we maintain our liberty, and I'll let it go at that. So, getting back to Sweet Fanny, despite what I said about, I believe all this is going to go away magically by the U.S. Supreme Court in short order, in addition to these bogus cases by Jack Smith and the civil nonsense going on with Judge Engeron and these other idiots up there. I think that that is going to be a first-class Eighth Amendment appeal. I think that is going to be a defining Eighth Amendment appeal. I think it's going to be one of the most important Eighth Amendment clarification cases, if you will, in our nation's history. I don't remember an Eighth Amendment appeal, at least in my lifetime. I'm sure there has. I'd have to check further into it. I'm very certain that they're going to find these type of fines, this type of lawfare, this type of legalization of lawfare to be unconstitutional pursuant to the Eighth Amendment. Thank God for those first 10 amendments. I mean, what a stroke of wisdom that those were put in to protect us all. All right, without further ado, Sweet Fanny cannot keep her mouth shut. She wants to talk to you about a train that is coming. You know, you would think she'd learn the first time she got in trouble in court by supporting the candidate of a guy she was trying to put in jail. You think she would learn with this last fiasco that almost had her completely disqualified by going to A&E Church and telling everybody that God is on her side and that everybody else is a racist? Oh, she didn't learn nothing. And you're about to see it right now. So without further ado, let's take a peek at Sweet.
All right, this CNN exclusive, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is defending herself, her reputation, and her team's work in her first public comments since Judge Scott McAfee's decision to keep her on the election subversion case. CNN's Rafael Romo is with us now on how CNN caught up with Willis and what she had to say today.
Yeah, I have to give credit to our very dynamic producer, Jade, Tim Garcia, who managed to get this interview. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis spent her Saturday at an Easter egg hunt. The event was put together by WAVE, an organization of law enforcement officers dedicated to helping children and the homeless throughout the year. Willis was surprisingly candid, Fred, regarding questions about the last few months of her life, including her Georgia election interfering case against Donald Trump and the scandal brought about by her prior romantic relationship with special prosecutor she appointed for the case. We wanted to know if she feels like she needs to reclaim her reputation, and this was her reply.
I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. Let's say it for the record. I'm not embarrassed by anything I've done. I guess my greatest crime is I had a relationship with a man, but that's not something that I find embarrassing in any way. And I know that I have not done anything that's illegal.
The racketeering case was delayed by 2 months, so let's remember.
Boy, she has a real high opinion of herself, doesn't she? She has the gall to say there she has nothing to be embarrassed of. She's done nothing wrong. Oh, my goodness. The hubris of this woman is just unbelievable. Clearly, this is what you call a DEI candidate. I don't know how she got through law school or got this job. This woman is a complete and utter idiot. I don't use the word racist lightly. She is a racist, and it pains me to have to say that, but I have to tell you the reality. You don't go to church and talk like that about other people. What is the matter with this woman?
Remember, following the revelations about her personal life, her decision-making credibility was also damaged in the eyes of Judge Scott McAfee. But the embattled Fulton County District Attorney said the main case was not delayed because her team never stopped working on it. Let's take a look.
No, my team's been continuing to work, and I think the media, and especially organizations like your own, have been paying attention. All while that was going on, we were writing responsive briefs. We were still doing the case in the way that it needed to be done. I don't feel like we've been slowed down at all. I do think that there are efforts to slow down this train, but the train is coming.
The train is coming, she said, Fred, if you didn't hear that. And CNN reported exclusively on Thursday, Willis plans to press ahead with her goal of putting Donald Trump on trial before the November election, according to 3 people familiar with her plan.
I think the train is coming where she's going to be reviewed. You should see this list of cases that I've been compiling that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, for that matter, are still facing. Everything from the federal House, the federal Senate. You got Jim Jordan looking into her. You got all kinds of different commissions looking at her inside the state of Georgia. You have the Senate. They just passed a law where now they have a tribunal that can look into DAs and remove them if necessary. She has a lot to be worried about. And one last thing I want to tell you, any type of Rico case, it does not move this fast. It moves very, very painfully slow. It always has moved slow. And just because she wants it to move fast doesn't mean it's going to move fast. It's not the state that's entitled to a speedy trial. It's the defendant that has a right to a speedy trial, not the government. And don't let them tell you differently.
And she also intends to ask the judge presiding over the Georgia criminal case to schedule a trial date as soon as this summer. And finally, and this is very important, Fred, let's remember that Willis is seeking to get reelected in November. So she's got a lot on her plate, to say the least.
That is a lot, but she sounds very confident about being prepared to carry on.
That's right.
All right, Rafael Romo, thank you so much to you and Jade for bringing this to us. All right, back with us right now, former federal prosecutor Anush Kadori. He is now a senior writer for Politico magazine. So Anush, you heard from Fani Willis there, and she is unwavering. She says they have continued to do the work, even though there was that 2-month delay while, her behavior was under investigation. So should the trial get underway this summer, she says her team is ready.
Well, I mean, look, if it can be done this summer, right, and her team is ready and all the defendants are ready and the judge is ready, that would be a perfectly appropriate thing to do. The problem is that it is not entirely up to her. Last summer, this case was filed, and it was already going to be ambitious, even at that point in time, to bring a case like this, 19 defendants, complicated issues, high-profile issues, novel issues, to trial in a year. So that was already going to be a very, very heavy lift. Where we are now, there's still a bunch of pending issues, significant pretrial issues. And of course, there's still the defendant's intended appeal from Judge McAfee's decision allowing Willis and her office to stay on the case. And the reason why that one is particularly important is a very practical reason. I'm sure folks will immediately recognize. The judge is not going to want to have a trial if the verdict from that trial later needs to be thrown out because the prosecutor on the case was disqualified in the interim, right? So he's not going to want to have a trial before that is fully resolved at the appeal level because it would be a waste of time and it would be bad for him personally if he got reversed and the trial was meaningless.
Did you feel that Judge McAfee's decision was appeal proof? I've heard some define it that way because he went beyond his explanation as to why he believes she should stay on the case, yet at the same time reprimanded her. Did that essentially protect his decision to keep her on the case so that, as the Trump team says it wants to appeal, they may not really have anything in which to appeal it on? Yeah,
I do think their odds of success are quite low because I thought the judge's opinion was well constructed.
I disagree with that comment.
He made detailed factual findings, including as to credibility, which are very difficult for appeals courts to second guess. But even if it's a low probability, even if you're the judge, it's a 5%, it's a 1 out of 20 chance that he'll eventually be reversed.
I totally disagree with that. I said earlier what I think the Court of Appeals is going to look at in deciding whether to take the case, but I could be wrong. You never know what they're going to say, but to say it's a low probability, I don't think so. The judge has already certified to go up, and now it's just up to the Court of Appeals. Unfortunately, everything is political, even with the court system. That's what we get when we have elected judges. I believe the Court of Appeals is an appointed position, so it's a little bit better, but they are appointed by Republican elected individuals, which generally means this type of thing will probably be taken up, but we'll see.
He's going to be thinking about the practicalities of putting the country through a trial that may be upended even on a small percentage.
Now, that is a good point. If this judge wanted to rush this, he would rethink that, because he does not want to go forward and hurry a trial when there's a good likelihood that it might be reversed. It will do no one no good. It doesn't do the defendants any good. It's not good for the prosecution, and it's definitely not good for the country. And he is right. The judge will consider all of this. And I believe he's going to say in a second that the judge is in no mood after all of this nonsense to do any favors for the Fani Willis administration, and I have to agree with that.
And would it also seem, because you've got the same judge who would be overseeing the election subversion case, wouldn't it also seem that he would feel almost an obligation to try to honor a speedy trial, because there was this 2-month delay because the co-defendants had filed this complaint, against the prosecutor. And now that his decision has been rendered, does the judge feel compelled to get on with the case, so to speak?
I would think that the judge is very happy to just turn the page and keep this moving. The question is whether it can move that quickly, right? And I think the closest analog that particularly folks in the Atlanta area will be familiar with is the Young Thug trial, right? Which involves a lot of people in and around entertainment industry. That case has been going on for a couple of years. It's still going on. And it's the closest comparator just in the scale, the number of defendants, the complexity of the case. And that's gone on for years.
Okay, he's talking about right now in Atlanta, there is a Rico case by the Fani Willis company involving a rapper named Young Thug. And this particular case has been going on for years. That's generally the way it takes for a Rico case. In my experience, the cases I have seen, just to pick a jury in a Rico case can take a year. These cases are extremely complex, extremely burdensome, tons of and just because Fani Willis wants to hurry up and attempt to get a bogus conviction before the election, basically she's committing an election interference. She's a Democrat trying to help out the Biden administration. We know that for a whole list of reasons, including secret, quote unquote, secret meetings between Fani Willis and the current Vice President, Kamala Harris, that is documented, well documented, I might say. Just because she wants a speedy trial doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I wholeheartedly agree with what he just said.
Right. So, and I would just one last point, I guess I would make, which is relevant to that. The judge issued a relatively highly critical opinion, let's put it that way, of the DA and questioned her credibility. On a very practical, psychological, human level, we should not expect him to be in the mood to do any favors for her now.
And then, I guess my last question was, how might a further delay impair the readiness of the team that Willis says they have right now?
The government is very good at maintaining continuity of the people working cases, particularly very important cases. There'll be attorneys who we will never even hear about, who I'm sure are working on the case, investigators that way too. So I wouldn't expect the delay itself. I think we should all take Willis fully at her word when she says the office is doing everything it can to move this case along as expeditiously as possible.
Yeah, also her words were, the train is coming, to underscore her and her team's.
Yeah, I agree, Fanny. The train is coming, but I don't think it's the type of train she wants to see coming. I would not want to trade places with Fani Willis for any reason under any type of circumstance. Imagine that you have the House of Representatives threatening you with, via Jim Jordan, I'm talking about the federal House of Representatives, threatening you with contempt of Congress. There is a guy, Peter Navarro, right now, who is in prison for 3 or 4 months for contempt of Congress. They will go after her and put her in jail, in prison, if they have to. At least we hope would happen if she continues to defy Congress. She has the Georgia State Bar investigator. She has the House of Representatives in the state of Georgia. She's facing 22 counts of impeachment there. There are a number of agencies. I'll try to compile my list and make sure it's 100% correct, and we'll go over it next time. But I currently have 15 or 16 different situations that Fani Willis and company are involved in. And it ranges from what I just said to different lawsuits involving the fact she will not turn over records. And listen, this particular hearing that she just got away with, this one she just barely survived for now to stay on this case, she didn't turn over her cell phone records, her a whole list of data that is somewhat privileged that they're not able to get out of her at this juncture. It doesn't mean the House of Representatives federally can't get that information through discovery. It doesn't mean that the state of Georgia can't get it via some of their numerous investigations. So we'll just have to see exactly how this works out. Craziness that's going on, and we'll just have to wait and see how that works out. So folks, we're going to cut it here for the day. It's been right at 1 hour. I appreciate you joining me. Always say keep that mind free and never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.